Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realms continuing coverage of the Fouke Monster Festival live here in Fouke, Arkansas. We are joined by Brandi Butcher, one of the hosts of Blondes and Booze. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I have seen you at numerous conferences around.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Blondes and Booze and how you got involved with it.
Well, Blondes and Booze was around before I got involved in it, and it was two friends, and they would just talk about paranormal activity and things like that. And as time went on, they invited me to come on the show, and there was three of us. Well, one of the ladies had to back out, so then there were two of us. But then the two of us that were left decided, hey, we not only like the paranormal, we like the cryptid side, the alien side, or anything with high strangeness.
Yeah, and my show is very much in the same vein. It's interesting to meet other people that cover things in different ways, and you guys have a lot of storytelling on your show. You have a lot of people that come on and share experiences. What are some of the more interesting Bigfoot experiences that y'all have had shared?
Well, mine is I guess my most exciting, because it happened to me.
Sure. Tell us about it.
Well, we were in the Ozarks. We were in Missouri, and we were attending a conference, but it was also a camp out. And we'd already been there for a couple of days, and we decided, hey, we were going to go out and do a little bit of hiking at night. Well, this big storm came in. Well, it tore up the whole camp, and there was things everywhere. Trash was everywhere. We thought, you know what? We can't fix anything. We're going to wait till morning. So this is about maybe about 2:30 in the morning. We decided, hey, we're gonna just go to bed, and we'll pick it all up in the morning.
Yeah.
So we had all went to bed. Well, I had picked up my bed out of my tent because I didn't want it wet. So I threw it in my vehicle, and I said, I'm just going to sleep in my vehicle. I am not pulling all this back out. I don't want it all wet. So I had went to sleep in the driver's side of my car, and I was watching the tent, and then I just went to sleep, and I'm like, okay. So then I started hearing a tapping on my car. I didn't open my eyes or anything. I just heard a tapping on the front of my car. I figured, it was raindrops or something else, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then, I start hearing this walk-in around the car. So I'm thinking it's one of the ladies I was with, and and we have this code: ladies don't go out in the wilderness and use the restroom at night by themselves. Somebody's always got to be on watch. So I got up and I looked at the tent. I didn't see a light. I didn't see that the tent was unzipped or anything. So I started scanning across the front of my car. When I got to the other side of my car, out the passenger side, I saw something standing there. At first, I had literally thought it was somebody standing there, like a human standing there.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, that's awfully big. So my next thought was, okay, we're in bear country. That's possible. But it was standing up. I'm like, okay, that's okay too. But it wasn't that. When I got a really good look at it, because the moonlight was kind of showing on the back of it, it was like about 6.5 foot tall. And I mean, the chest was like super wide. And I'm thinking, that's not a bear, and that's not a human. And when it kicked in, what I was really looking at, I'm thinking, that's Bigfoot. So all of a sudden, my adrenaline started kicking up. I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I can't grab my phone, because as soon as I grab my phone, that light's going to come on. It's going to see me. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Yeah. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I can't do anything else. I'm kind of stuck here. So I'm just like, well, I can't do anything else but try to lay back down exactly how I was and hope that it didn't see me. Yeah. Or it wasn't watching me. Yeah. When I was looking at it, though, it was kind of swaying back and forth, kind of it looked like to me trying to decide what it was going to do, if it was going to go further in. I think because with all the trash that was thrown about and things like that, it was looking for a free meal. You know what I mean? Sure. But it had been, I think it'd been watching us for a couple days, and it was just the perfect time. Everybody went to bed. Interesting. And they thought, well, let's go look. And, that
the more researchers that I talk to, the more people that I talk to, that is a commonality that I hear. They weren't out in the woods for that purpose. They weren't out in the woods hunting that. They were just out in the woods, or they were just camping. And because they were quiet, because they were still, because they weren't raising a ruckus or using, the one I've always wondered is infrared trail cams, because a critter like that would see in the night, which means it would see in the partial infrared, which means that would be like a spotlight to them. Well, see, you wonder why they're avoiding a trail cam? Right, because I've never caught anything on an infrared. Nothing at all. And that's just it. It's like, there are some things there that I can understand the want to use them, but yeah, like any animal that's roaming around at night sees into the near infrared. They would see that the same way as an LED flashlight.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So those things tend to kind of scare it away as opposed to just being there, and especially being there in the same spot for numerous days.
Right, right. Well, what made this, I guess, an awesome thing is because we had actual season trackers there.
Oh, wow.
And they actually tracked where this thing came out of the woods in the tree line, went back in the tree line, and then walked down and came back around the back of the tent that I was supposed to be in.
Wow.
And then there were other people hearing it walk. So all of our timelines, they didn't come out of their tent, but all of the timelines matched up. Not only that, Daniel Perez from the Bigfoot Times out of California, he was there.
Oh, wow.
So he got to interview me firsthand on,
Cool. While
on,
it's
on all
fresh.
that. Yeah. So I ended up, the whole thing was about our encounter because he was there. He was so excited.
Did anyone else in the group and in the party that you were with have an experience, hear anything, see anything other than
I'm the only one that saw
tracking
it
after?
because I had a view.
Yeah.
Everyone else is in their tent, but everybody's timeline matched up. As it was walking around, everybody was talking about, they looked at their clock or they looked at, whatever they had, and you could tell that the timeline matched up with the footsteps on what they were hearing and when it went by, because they're just all, it was just perfect. It was perfect textbook.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things we talk about regularly on the show, especially with people like Chester Moore who are involved in the world of conservancy,
right,
is the idea of the future. The idea of, yes, like Ryan Edwards was saying earlier, these things are on a long discovery platform. And, the fact that we heard about lowland gorillas but didn't discover them till 100 years after we heard about them.
Right.
We're verging on the 70-year mark of Sasquatch here in America, at least the modern sightings, things like that, from the point of Patterson-Gimlin to now. Not necessarily Native American lore, Native American stories, but in the modern world. And the idea of conservation, the idea of, we have numerous really close calls with wildlife regularly. Like there were just like coyotes spotted in L.A.,
Yes.
There's the L.A. cougar that just died like this last year,
Right.
At a ripe old age. But because we are encroaching on these territories, these animals have become normalized to our presence. Like it's pretty common to see videos of somebody with a bear in their backyard digging through trash nowadays,
Right.
that kind of stuff. And I regularly bring up, like you said, he was maybe looking for an easy meal because y'all had been there for days. It's like, you think you have a problem with the bear in your trash. Imagine when there's a Sasquatch in the apartment dumpster, because you've encroached too close
Right.
to a roaming.
Well, and I did ask questions about that after the fact, after the encounter, and I was like, well, what about the bear? Are the bear in that area? They're saying the funniest thing, that where we were camping on this, it was a personal property, that bears would skirt around it, but they would never go through it.
Okay.
So that amazed me. They said they have trackers on the bears out there, and they try to keep track of them, and they skirt the area. They don't go in the area.
Interesting. And during your time with Blondes and Booze, have you what's one of the, aside from your story, what's the wildest story that you've heard so far?
I've heard several, and it's kind of hard to choose just one.
Topic then.
The topic, mine is more like the paranormal is kind of meshing in with the cryptid side, and I think that's where I'm kind of focusing at, is how it's intertwined, but I'm trying to figure out how.
Yeah. And that's something that we talk about regularly on the show. I am a big believer, and I will use my exact phrasing so that people exactly get me.
Right.
I am a believer that there is a large hominid species roaming the forests of North America and beyond across the globe.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
But I am also a believer that, much like Dogman, much like other occurrences, much like other occurrences, specifically paranormal occurrences with Sasquatch coming through a portal, Sasquatch being tied with UFOs, I think that there may be something else out there, be it like we've discussed with Jason McLean before, something along the lines of the people of the Fae,
Right.
who are basically using a trope in our mind that we would be okay with. Like we've just bumped into each other
Right.
now. If you saw me in my true form, you would be scared to the dickens. But what would you allow? And it's using that trope in our mind of what we're like, oh, well, they would be okay with seeing a Sasquatch.
Right.
I'm a Sasquatch.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and you're like, well, if it's seeing a fairy,
Yeah.
it would be like, okay, I'm going to show you myself as a fairy.
Yeah.
So you'll get used to me.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And we just had Max Hawthorne on not too long ago, and he was talking about he and his daughter who witnessed a creature that was very akin to a fairy. And he saw it differently than his daughter.
Wow.
She saw like Tinkerbell. He saw something else. And that was, I was like, that is a prime example of what I'm talking about, where
Right.
two people viewing the exact same thing have a totally different experience of
Right.
what they are physically seeing. Not even like, oh, well, I saw gray hair. Well, I saw brown hair. Same critter, different color hair. No, like totally different entity.
Right.
Totally different thing. And phenomenologically, that's interesting to me.
Yeah, well, in the paranormal community, we use a spirit box.
Sure.
And, it spits out words, and it's off a radio frequency. But we have the same thing, but it's to do with your hearing.
Sure.
You may be listening to this, and somebody might think it says one thing, but you
Yeah.
hear a totally complete different thing.
My wife is a Mondegrain sufferer, and the number of times that I have to like, no, sweetie, what I said was this.
Yes.
Because she'll laugh, and she'll be like, I know you didn't just say this, right? And I'm like, absolutely not. That is not what I said at all. I
bet you
love
that makes
you so
interesting
much.
conversations.
I love you so much. But that's just it. Like, and we discuss that phenomenology on the show regularly. The idea of truth is individual. There's a capital T truth out there, but when it comes to experience is individual. And even if you talk to my brother is literally in the other room, we both grew up with the same single mom. We both have individual experiences of that household.
Right.
We both have individual ways that we view the same family experiences, the same Christmases. We view it from different points of view, and that makes a different experience. It makes a unique experience for both of us, even though we grew up in the same place.
Right. It's just kind of like we're always wondering things. Is it really connected? Why am I hearing other things? And how do we know? It's in the paranormal community also. I have to remember that the paranormal has been part of my life since as far as I can remember. Even before I could, my mom would tell me stories.
Yep.
And I would hear things, but I had to figure out, am I hearing it with my ears or am I hearing it in my head?
Yep. And I talk to a lot of targeted individuals, people who for years have been complaining, like decades, have been complaining about Havana syndrome type symptoms.
Right.
Being targeted by technologies. And one of the things that I tell them when I talk to them and try to explain to them, like, let's start backwalking this in your life. You need to become oh so certain and sure of who you are, what you stand for, and what your inner dialogue is. Learn to know you.
You got to know
and
your
learn
body.
to know when you go, wait a minute, that's not my thought pattern.
Right.
That's not me. Let's back that up.
Right.
Yes,
exactly.
And it's important. It's important. And even for paranormal investigation, one of the things that I've mentioned numerous times is how many times, because I've done paranormal investigation, I've worked with a couple of groups, and it wasn't frequent that while you're preparing gear that you're not talking about where you're going, that you're literally not feeding energy into the idea of what you're going to do.
Right.
Like technically you should be as scientific and as blank slate as possible. Here is my checklist. This is what I'm bringing. Cool. Let's not think about stories of the place for a week. Like, you should be going into there as blank slate as possible, because technically you might be charging that place before you ever step foot into it.
Right.
You might be actively charging it with energy that might surely create the phenomenon that you're looking for.
Right.
Or even color the way that you look at what you gather.
Right. Well, there are times, we talk about not mentioning when we don't introduce ourselves when we go into a haunted location. Me and Krista on Blondes and Booze, we do not do that.
Good.
Only because as we walk in, as we talk to each other, that spirit will already know you.
Yeah.
They will just listening to you. They'll know you because you'll be like, well, hey, Brandi, da da da.
Yeah.
They'll already know. You
Yeah.
don't have to introduce yourself. They'll pick up on you just like you pick up on them.
Yeah.
Especially if you're sensitive. So.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to all of these, whether it's UFO, UAP, whether it's paranormal and parapsychological investigation, whether it's cryptid investigation, it is important for us to decompartmentalize things and pull things out of the Kleenex box. The idea, I am one of those that is a big proponent of the relabeling of UFO to UAP, because once you include phenomena, now science has to look at it because that's their job.
Yes.
I don't think I would have passed chemistry if I gave my teacher my work and there was a 3% remainder of solution unaccounted for.
Right.
Where's the 3% anomaly? Did it go to gas? Did it go to sediment? Was it part of an exothermic reaction? What happened to the 3%? That's now your job in the experiment, is to find out what happened to the 3%. So by pulling it out of those Kleenex boxes, by pulling these things out of Bigfoot and turning them into hominid, let's turn it into something that is a field here that somebody like a Jeffrey Mildrum can look at and say, let's start looking at forensic evidence. Let's start looking at new forensic processes, like the idea that we can now start to pull and lift DNA off of hand oils. That kind of stuff. It's
agree.
Phenomenal to see, and I continually say, I cannot wait until BFRO, NAWAC, MUFON, everybody starts leveraging AI with their databases and starts feeding it into there and finding the true commonalities and finding the true threads, where on those maps you could literally start making red dots and literally make a trail.
Well, in the past, certain communities wouldn't list all of it in the reports.
Yeah.
And I think that they're starting to do that because you can't explain something if you don't have all the facts.
Well, and it's also the fact of very much, granted, there's a lot of people very upset with Arrow. I understand that. However, the one thing that I love about Arrow is at least they have gone through now and said, it is not shameful for you to come forth and make a report. We will not take your wings or your career from you.
Right.
And here is now a unified way, because until then, pretty much NICAP and MUFON, they had the unified systems. MUFON, more than anything, has been pretty much an unchanged intake system since 1969.
Right.
They have taken the same information. If it doesn't meet this criteria, it's pushed aside.
Right.
All those things, and that's great for the science of it. And we have to start doing that. We have to start sharing information. We have to start making these things part of a public database and making it available so that other researchers can find it. If you're hiding it, you've hidden the light under a bushel. Nobody's going to see it now.
Right. They won't. They might have a fact or two, but they won't know the whole picture.
That's right. So
we won't be able to understand anything in any instances if we just don't have all the facts.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, whenever you guys go, because y'all go out and do investigations actively, things like that, correct?
Yes, I do. Paranormal-wise, I travel around the United States and I hit all of the big locations everybody says, oh, this is the most haunted location ever. And I'm like, well, I'm from the Missouri. You're going to have to show me because I'm from the show me state. So I do that. Also, but we do investigate quite a bit for Bigfoot and Dogman in the land between the lakes.
Interesting.
Which now I've not seen a Bigfoot or a Dogman there, but I'll tell you, I have seen very crazy things there, from orbs to sounds to you just hear these really weird things and you see weird anomalies just hanging out in the middle of the woods. But you have to remember the land between the lakes has 237 cemeteries.
Yeah.
One of them being, of course, underwater, which used to be the old town of Birmingham that they flooded to make the land between the rivers, the land between the lakes.
Yeah.
So, that place is crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and the idea that you flooded a whole town, like that.
Yeah.
That's literally it. It's the root of horror movies. Like that. That's where Poltergeist comes from. Like you moved the gravestones, but you didn't move the bodies.
I know.
Like you wonder why things start happening.
You wonder why it's so crazy out there, and it's like it's creepy, beautiful. I just don't know how other to describe that place. The very first time I ever drove in there, I was driving in with, of course, my partner in crime, Krista, and both of us at the same time, our eyes started watering. And, the nose started running. It's like we were having a hard time breathing.
Wow.
Going in. But as soon as we reached where we were going to be camping, we were fine.
Interesting.
It was very weird. Nobody else suffered that. It's just her and I. She doesn't suffer from allergies. No, I do. Now, I could explain it away if it was just me, but she doesn't.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
It's just a strange place, but I love it, and I'll keep going back until I find my answers.
And speaking of Land Between the Lakes and Dogman, that is another one of those that is interesting once you start digging into it, and I think very, very much in the paranormal realm, and in the idea of almost egregore. Almost, I consider it almost in the idea of, was this thing kind of created and projected into the world by us and by experiencers?
We could have manifested it, we
could
could have. But I think things have been going on there long before we ever got there.
Yeah. Give us an example.
There is a farm out there, and it is abandoned, but it is one of their landmarks that they do protect. They keep it up. But I went in there, and I'm recording, and I'm doing EVPs and things like that, and I'm getting voices out of there.
Wow.
So I know that there is residual energy still there. I've seen orbs. There was 10 of us around a campfire, and we all started seeing orbs together. They were all different shapes, all different colors.
Wow.
And everybody was seeing something different. And it wasn't in one place. It was all around us.
Wow.
One person even said that it looked like somebody had a flashlight walking up the hill to us, but there was nobody there. That's how bright it was.
Wow.
So it's just, like I said, it's just a creepy, beautiful place.
That is awesome. And, being out in the field, experiencing things like that, it does put you in a different place. It puts you in a different perspective when you're looking at other people's evidence now, or data, I should say, not evidence, data. Because I say it on the show regularly.
Yeah, data. You're right.
Evidence is what you give your lawyer to exonerate you.
Right.
Like, evidence will set you free. That you better, if you're saying it's evidence, you better be that certain that's what it is. Aside from that, you have some amazing data there.
That's a wonderful way to put it.
Let's add that piece of datum to the data set, and let's grow it, and let's learn more.
Yeah.
That's how we have to look at it, because the more we call things evidence all the time, it's no different than saying it's a UFO, which, if you're looking at it in the terms of, yes, it's an object, it's in the sky, it's moving, and I don't know what it is. Bam. UFO?
UFO.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That is a UFO.
Yes.
You look at it and you go, look at that alien spaceship.
Wait,
well, let's study some more data.
Yeah.
Let's look at some more data on it.
Right.
And that's where I come at it from, because we discover things all the time. When we discover on average 10,000 species a year, we are far from discovering everything. Typically on my show, this is where I would overlay and show back-to-back AB, the map of sightings from BFRO, the Bigfoot Research Organization, and an overhead shot of the United States from the ISS at night. And AB them. And hey, look at all those sightings. Hey, look at where all those dark spots are. Hey, look at all those sightings. Look at where all those dark spots are.
Exactly.
There's 3/4 of the United States that is not lit at night because we ain't there.
Right.
And it's real interesting that that's where a lot of the sightings happen. Like the Pacific Northwest, a good 5 planes a decade go missing up there. Those things have transponders. They never find those people again.
Yeah, it's just a crazy how that works.
It's a rainforest.
Yeah.
It's a rainforest. We haven't explored it all.
Right.
And for some reason, people have this misguided concept that 95% of the ocean is explored.
Oh, gosh,
Opposite,
no.
5%.
Oh, gosh, no.
5% is explored.
Right.
You know.
Because, I'm thinking, we're always talking about aliens being, in space. I'm thinking, what if they're under our ocean? What if they're under there?
Yeah.
There is so much that we don't know.
What if they are us from another time coming back to see, which explains a lot of why they're really concerned about humanity, why they really want a whole lot of questions answered about nuclear weapons and nuclear processes. And please, good God, take care of yourselves, take care of this planet. Like,
right.
It's interesting. And when you start looking at the work of people like Dr. Michael Hunter, who is an anthropologist and has basically extrapolated out, like, let's look at the evolution of humanity and how we came to the jawline and the skull we have from Cro-Magnon, and the elongation of it, and the enlarging of our eyes, and the enlarging of our brow. And
right.
if you project that forward by a couple thousand years, we come out pretty gray looking.
Yeah, and I always say this about Bigfoot. What if they're our missing link in that whole line? What if they just said, hey, we're done, we're leaving, we're jumping out of this?
Well, and for those of you who are like, well, theory of evolution, not scientific fact of evolution, not scientific law of evolution, theory, which means there was a hypothesis, now there's some data, we're still experimenting, that's why it's a theory. When you go back and look at the bones of Lucy, that's like a 15% complete skeleton.
Right.
So there's a lot missing in our human story. We just, in the last 2 years, discovered Dragon Man in China.
There's so many things coming out.
10-foot tall human with the skull almost twice the volume.
Yeah, I just wonder when that people are actually going to say, hey, this is a fact. This is real.
Yeah.
There are so many people saying, well, there's just not enough evidence. There's not enough evidence. There's that word, evidence.
Data.
But you got to look at the data.
The data is what you have to look at.
Yeah.
Because you can say whatever you want about conspiracy theory, folks. If we didn't have conspiracy theorists, nobody would be sitting in jail. That's quite literally the job of a DA, is to take data, give you a narrative, pull you down a line, and sell you on it.
Right.
They are conspiracy theorists by trade. Otherwise, nobody would be convicted of conspiracy, and there's a lot of people in jail for it.
I believe it. I believe it. And I'm just like, you have to watch what you say. You're like, am I one of those people? I got to be quiet.
But there is so much out there, and people are so ready to make a hard decision when we need to look at more data. We need to bring in more data.
Yeah.
We need to bring in bigger data sets and learn to cull through that.
Yeah, I think you're correct when you say it's not the evidence, it's the data.
It's the data.
Yeah.
That's it.
100%.
Data is sexy to me.
It is a sexy word.
Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go to catch up with Blondes and Booze, where they can go to follow all your research and become part of the community.
Blondes and Booze are on every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central. We're on Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. I'm also the co-host with Tex Wesson on Texas Front Porch on Mondays at 8 p.m. Central. And pretty much when we go out in the field, you know what we know because we show you everything.
Epic. Brandi, thank you so much for the time.
Thank
More than
you.
a pleasure. I've seen you at a few conferences, and
Yes.
it's nice to finally get to sit down and talk.
Yeah, we're always so busy. We never get to.
Yeah, exactly. So while you are online, checking out everything from Brandi Butcher and Blondes and Booze, everybody, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can find all of our live coverage of events. That is where you can also like, follow, subscribe, share. Don't forget about our free Roku app, where you can get all the episodes as well as some amazing binaural beat music. Stay tuned through this quick break. We will be right back with our continuing coverage of the Fouke Monster Festival here in Fouke, Arkansas, right after this.